Good evening, my name is Emilio Lopez and I'm here to talk about Mr. Peter Abelard. Mr. Peter Abelard once said, "It is by doubting that we come to investigate, and by investigating that we recognize the truth." Peter Abelard was born to lesser nobility, the knight Berengar and Lucia Abelard. Peter was born in 1079 AD in La Palais in Brittany, near Nantes in France. Peter was the firstborn of three and a smart boy who learned quickly. His writings show influence from Cicero, Horace, Lucian, Seneca, and many more. He also claims to have been outstanding in his talent and faculty for learning. Before Abelard was 20, he left the court of Mars and went to be educated in Minerva. By some, he is considered the best philosopher and theologian of the 12th century. He brought the Latin native tradition to its highest pitch. His genius was evident in all he did. One of the best logicians and the first great philosophers of his time, he is said by both supporter and detractor to have never lost an argument. A critical factor that brought Peter to the subject of psychology would be when his father, Knight of Berengar, encouraged Peter when he was a boy to study liberal arts. His father had acquired some education before he was given the sword belt of a knight. This caused him to make sure his sons were educated by letters before taking the life of a knight. In this, he provided more carefully for Peter's education because he was the firstborn of three brothers. Aristotle also played a critical role in bringing Peter to the subject of psychology, because one of the first things that Peter did was to translate Aristotle's works. This, in turn, caused him to question and build upon Aristotle's teachings, as well as all philosophy, theology, and scientific methods. One such teaching, known as the dialectic method, was used by Peter to try to overcome perceived inconsistencies within the church dogma. In this, he would compare the recognized truths with the questionable, to deduce down to the truth of the matter. Peter also believed that anyone, no matter the age, could and should participate in disputation or debate, because this arguing and debating could cause the end result to be better than the beginning. This is known as the dialectic reasoning method. He believed that essences are not the same thing as physical existence. This means that the same thing does not exist wholly and essentially in all of the individual cases. William of Champeaux, who believed in universals, argued that the same thing does exist wholly and essentially in all of the individuals of its class. When debating with Peter, William changed his opinion to agree, though not explicitly, with Peter. And Peter argued that the conclusions reached when logic is applied to words do not necessarily generalize to the physical world. Logically, this could be worded to say that behavior should match that of a human and not that of an animal. He also believed, like Aristotle before him, that the first principles could be arrived at by both thought and examining nature directly. Peter Abelard had a profound effect on the field of psychology by using the dialectic method on 158 theological questions that seemed to be answered in contradicting ways. He then took them and examined the arguments and counter-arguments to clarify issues to arrive at a valid conclusion. In this, he was not trying to contradict the church dogma, but to overcome perceived inconsistencies in statements made by theologians through the ages. In the great debate of realism and nominalism, he proposed conceptualism. For example, all instances of things we call beautiful have something in common. So based on the commonalities, we form the concept of beauty. Thus, concepts summarize individual experiences, nominalism. But once formed, concepts in a sense exist apart from the individual experiences upon which they were formed. This is realism. Other interesting information of Peter Abelard was that he was a highly intelligent man who offended pretty much all of the philosophers of his day, of the prestigious philosophers, and students as well. In fact, so much so that the jealousy of William of Champeaux, Anselm at Laon, and the students helped make him famous. At the height of his career, he fell in love in the city of Paris with a girl named Heloise, the niece of a canon called Fulbert, whom loved his niece so much that he made every effort to give her the best possible education. Peter says that he was utterly on fire with love for her, so he hatched a plan to tutor her so he could have her, which Fulbert consented to, even though Peter told him he would do it for any price. Peter also said a quote, that he could not believe the naivete of Fulbert, and that sending Heloise or letting Heloise be his student was like sending a lamb to work with a wolf. Fulbert consented, even though Peter told him he would do it for any price. The tutoring went on for months until Mr. Fulbert found out. Side note, everybody around them knew. But by then, she was pregnant. The couple did not necessarily want to marry, especially Heloise. While Abelard did to protect his and Fulbert's reputation, they ended up getting married for various reasons, and Heloise became a nun. The father, believing that Peter had forced her to become a nun, snuck into his room with some men one night and castrated Mr. Abelard. From this point on, Heloise and Peter both put themselves thoroughly into the work of the church. He founded the Paraclete, where Heloise stayed and was head nun for the remainder of her life. Thank you very much.